With Wrath of the Lich King right around the corner, there are an absolute ton of classes that get some major updates. Some classes that weren't viable before are now getting major facelifts, making them great in either PvP or even raiding rather than before when they really weren't just that viable at all. This is going to be a perfect time for you as a player to decide if you're going to keep your main from before or try something new come Wrath of the Lich King. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the channel. My name is Sky, and today we're going to be bringing you super fun classes you could main in Wrath of the Lich King. Starting off with number 1, the very obvious Death Knight. If you've ever played Wrath or even seen gameplay, you know that the class overall is just incredibly fun to play in all forms of content. Frost Death Knight, dealing loads of heavy frost damage to your foes while dual wielding. Unholy, being the ultimate tactician and ruling over mindless undead to do your bidding. And Blood, mastering the total ability of damage mitigation. Don't even get me started with how amazing the class fantasy of this class is in Wrath of the Lich King. I mean, breaking free from the Lich King's grasp to eventually bring him to his own doom? A classic story event of the apprentice eventually taking over the master. DPS-wise in raids throughout most phases, and especially early on, Death Knights are incredibly powerful, and just because they're the new kids on the block doesn't mean they don't know what they're doing. Frost Death Knights in particular have incredibly strong single target DPS, and due to most of their abilities being magic damage, it puts them ahead of the curve over other classes due to them being primarily physical damage dealers. With Unholy DK bringing the same bonus, but their primary focus being more along the lines of cleave and AoE, rather than just being single target damage. Both the damage classes bring great raid buffs like Improve Icy Talons for melee and Ebon Plaguebringer for casters. Blood Death Knights might not start off strong, but they scale incredibly well throughout the expansion, making them at least above average to have. Even in PvP, you're going to see a ton of Death Knights absolutely destroying people in arenas and BGs, with either being Frost or Unholy. All in all, if you're looking for a solid melee class, Death Knight is definitely a go-to option to look at come Wrath. Moving on to number 2, the Paladin. It is widely known that Paladin goes down as the best class come Wrath of the Lich King. With having the number 1 spot at both healing and tanking in a raiding environment, it's very obvious to see why. The class fantasy of going into Northern as a Paladin to stop the endless armies of the undead to save the world is one of the coolest class situations you can possibly be in. Protection being quite lackluster in previous expansions now becomes the best tank in the game. Solid threat generation for AoE and single target, and also having great defensives and utility as well, and also having their only issue of mana regeneration being completely nullified, they are super strong to have as your main tank. Holy Paladin, being the strongest single target healer in the game in previous expansions, now gets an ability that allows them to heal multiple targets at once for no additional mana cost with Beacon of Light ability. And Ret Paladin, being the meme that it was before, is completely different now, having a real rotation, very powerful raid utility, and amazing versatility in a raid. You can never have enough Paladins come Wrath of the Lich King in PvE and in your raid environment. They are just incredibly strong and very powerful to have, making them pretty much an S overall. Even in PvP, they shine as well. You're constantly going to be seeing Holy Paladins in arenas and Retribution Paladins swinging away from massive cleave damage. It's truly a spec that shines in all forms of content and will definitely be incredibly fun to play come Wrath of the Lich King. Now going to number 3, the Rogue. This is a class that truly changes with the times for the better. With now all 3 specs being amazing in at least one form of content, Rogue is truly a DPS king overall come Wrath of the Lich King. With new legendary abilities like Killing Spree, new specs being super great in PvE early on like Assassination, and Subtlety being the absolute king of PvP like usual, this makes Rogue an insane pick to potentially main come Wrath. Assassination is particularly super strong for raids early on because poisons and envenom bypass armor, and as a melee, that brings you a huge advantage over the rest. Combat Rogue gets absolutely broken with some scaling after the first phase due to the lack of armor pen, but with the gaining of stats in armor pen, they really become effective. Come the last few phases, they just propel instantly to the top. It's also super fun to note that Combat Rogue in PvP is great to play as well. We've all seen those insane one-shot killing spree videos like this one above. It is just way too much fun of a button to press. Speaking of PvP, Subtlety also gets the brand new Shadow Dance ability, which allows them to use in-stealth abilities out of combat, making them absolutely nuts for arenas specifically. Rogue has been in stealth for a while overall, but come Wrath of the Lich King, They definitely make it known that they are highly effective in all forms of content, as they should be, and it makes them a fantastic class that can be mained easily come Wrath of the Lich King. Moving on to our fourth and final class you can main is the Druid. The Druid is no slouch come Wrath. Feral Druids being S tier in DPS in multiple phases, Balanced Druid actually being viable with an actual rotation for once, Restoration Druids being the king of healing over time and the ability to never run out of mana, and Bear Tanks having by far the biggest health pools in the game with great damage. The Druid is so powerful in all forms of content, with pretty much every single specialization they can be. Don't forget about the fact that they can get a free flight form, which will save you a ton of gold for reinvesting into other important things like professions and gear. The Druids are by far the most versatile class in the game, with a damage type and spec that fills every role there is. Having the ability to tank and DPS by simply changing forms at a very high level for both, might I note, is something that is incredible to have. Now, also having the dual specialization option helps Druid, I think, the most more than other classes, with now having the ability for their healer spec to have a balanced Druid specialization for farming and open world questing, it makes them even more efficient than they already were before. Even in PvP, all specs are viable in all forms of content. Boomkin can rain down massive damage with Starfalls and high consistent DPS with all their dots. Feral Druids brings insane burst and high utility with Cyclones and instant healing, with huge ferocious bites as well. And Restoration Druid is the king of healing on the move with incredible mobility. Druid is amazing come Wrath, and if you're looking for the ultimate Swiss Army knife of a class, I would say Druid is your way to go. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to bring this video to a close. What do you guys plan on maining come Wrath of the Lich King? Is it the same old class you've been playing, or is it going to be something completely new to you? Let us know in the comments below. I'm personally going to be playing a Ret Paladin, while Lance is going to be playing Shadow Priest. But like always, I hope you have an amazing day. Be safe. Have a wonderful one. My name is Sky from the Comeback Kids, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace!